So we're going to get started with the first webinar of this series, which is East Meets West, and we're going to learn all about working culture in Singapore to celebrate International Education Week. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're really excited to learn more from the people who know best. To start, I'm Anna. I'm part of the Absolute Internship team. I'm going to be the webinar host this week, so I'll be joining you for all of the different sessions if you're signed up for more than one. My job is just to guide the speakers through, ask them questions, because I'm also really curious. I've never been to Singapore, so I'm very excited to learn from the two experts we have with us. And just a little bit about Absolute Internship, just in case you don't know who we are and what we do. We have placed 5,000 interns since 2009, all over the world in Asia and Europe, within more than 800 companies from more than 53 nationalities. So a really international company, and we think it's really important to celebrate International Education Week here at Absolute Internship. So just a quick introduction about what some of our students have said about Singapore. Singapore is actually one of our top program locations. And you can see here that, Singapore is a beautiful country, albeit strict, and it sounds like it's extremely safe and there's lots to do. The working environment was rated at 8.2 out of 10. So I'm really excited to see why it was rated so highly. And the top industries that we host interns in Singapore are business development, marketing, and finance. And as you can see there, our students love Singapore and the beautiful culture it has. So yeah, we'll be learning more about that. And here are our speakers for today. We have Cole, who is one of our Absolute alumni who participated in the 2018 Singapore Internship program. And we have Larson, the co-founder at Visual Studio. So I'll stop sharing my screen now so I can actually see you all. Larson, we'll start by just giving me a really quick introduction, about who you are and what you do and why you're in Singapore.
Sure, thanks for having me, Anna. My name is Larson. I've founded this creative agency, Visual Studio, since 2004. That's almost 17 years now. So we have offices in Manila, Shanghai, Jakarta, and headquarters in Singapore. I'm really a Southeast Asian kind of guy. So I've worked in Macau, in Jakarta, in Manila, and pretty much around this region. So we've worked with Absolute for the last 7-8 years, and really has been absolutely awesome, and we love all the students who came by. So happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. And Cole, if you can introduce yourself as well, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Cole Mackey. So I'm from the United States. I live in Indiana. Right now finishing up my pharmacy degree, where I completed my MBA here in Indiana. It was a great experience to be able to go to Singapore 3 years ago now. Time really flies. But when I was there, I worked with Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So their emerging markets division is in Singapore at a place called Biopolis. A really neat city, an amazing experience, and I can't wait to share more. So thanks for having me on the call.
Great. So I wanted to start by asking you, Larson, what is your experience with the working culture in Singapore? Like, I'm sure you've worked in other locations, like you said, around Asia and other places. So what would you say is the main difference between Singapore and other places that you've worked?
I've been in Singapore almost all my life, studied in Perth for a couple of years, worked in Macau for a couple of months, and pretty much around the region. I think earlier in my career, I think in 2003, I went to China for the very first time, and they were shocked that Singaporeans are actually multilingual, or at least bilingual. So I was in China for the very first time in 2003, and I was on the phone with a client who was back in Singapore dialing into me. And the locals Chinese, they were shocked that I could speak fluent English. But now in 2021, I don't think that impresses them anymore. Yeah. So I think Singaporeans are generally hardworking. It's super fast paced in most industries. And because we have to work with colleagues and clients from different ethnic groups, and really multi-ethnicity is something we see almost every day. So that's just part and parcel of life.
Mm-hmm. So it's a really multicultural, diverse, and a place you can meet people from, all walks of life. And I just wanted to go to Cole and ask about your experience in Singapore. Of course, you were an intern there. What did you think of the culture and maybe how it differed from the United States?
Right. Yeah. So I definitely have to echo what Art Larson had to say. In Singapore, everyone's very hardworking. I definitely felt that. It wasn't too much of a shock. I think America has a similar drive, right? But it was just a great atmosphere to be in. I like that kind of atmosphere. And echoing the diversity part as well. Going into Singapore, I don't look like I'm from Singapore, but it didn't really shock anyone, right? I never felt like I was outside of it because diversity is just a part of what Singapore looks to bring, right? My team alone, my boss was from South Africa. There was a guy from Belgium, a person from Portugal, two from Singapore, and one from Japan, right? So that was my whole team is across the world. And one other thing that I saw in Singapore in the working culture was, I was new. I was an intern, a student still, but I felt like I was still brought into the team and respected very well. I think that in Singapore, the team was also very direct with feedback, which I particularly enjoyed, but was some getting used to, right? If you didn't perform as well on something that they thought, they would tell you that. But you had to come from a place where, they cared about you. It wasn't like they were out to get you or anything or talk down on you. But it was looking to build each other up. And I think that's something that you would see a bit transverse in any industry you'd go into in Singapore, which I really liked.
Yeah, and it's sort of, the perfect combination of East meets West. So we chose the right topic for this webinar. And Cole, again, what do you think about any culture shocks? Did you have anything that sort of took you back maybe when you first arrived in Singapore in terms of either the working culture or just the culture in general?
Right. Yeah. Good question. I think that I wasn't as particularly shocked as I thought I would be, to be completely honest. Like Larson said, a lot of people in Singapore speak English. It's one of the 4 national languages, I believe. And so from that, I felt comfortable because I knew I could communicate with people. And that was something I didn't necessarily expect to the level that Singapore brings. One culture shock that I did have is that, Singapore sits on the equator, right? And I'm from Indiana. I see all 4 seasons. And so going into it and seeing, I got to get ready and wear like these work clothes, these hot work clothes every day, and be able to get through that. I think traveling also was a bit of a culture shock, right? I drive a car every day. And in Singapore, that's not something it would be very, very possible for me. I got to get involved in the MRT system though, which is their like underground railway system, right? And that was something I never have really, done before. I've not had to commute in such a way before, and that was something I had to get used to. But by the end of it, something I really particularly enjoyed because I felt super connected to the city, right? I could go from one part of Singapore to the other in 45 minutes or so, just by the MRT system. And it was fairly cheap as well. And so while it was a bit to get used to, right, and be able to map out everything, I had my big train map walking around. Sometimes you could definitely tell I wasn't from the area. But by the end of it, I felt super connected. And even though it was a bit confusing at first, it helped me love and appreciate the city so much more.
Yeah, and I definitely feel you with the getting used to different weather. I'm from the UK and I moved to Barcelona and I'm shocked. It's November and I'm still hot. So yeah, I feel you with that one. And Larson, what did you think about, obviously you've been in Singapore most of your life, but looking from an insider's point of view, do you think are there any culture shocks that you might think people would experience arriving from other parts of the world?
Well, I can imagine it is, I've been in this melting pot of a city for most of my life, as you said. I'll just give you some statistics here. Our current president is a Malay. We have a Chinese as our prime minister, a Eurasian as our foreign minister who speaks to other foreign leaders, and an Indian as our law minister. So that's just something that we are so used to.
Yeah.
For culture shock, I don't think it's so much to do with work because, like Cole says, when you come to work in Singapore, you expect to work with people from all over the world. I would expect the shocks to come more on the interpersonal and socializing with your colleagues, with your friends. As I said, it's really common to share a dining table with somebody who's not from your race or not even from your country. And we have Malays who doesn't eat pork. They don't drink alcohol as well. And we have Chinese who doesn't eat beef, or Indian who is pure vegetarian. So it really has to be respectful in that aspect. And other than just working, I would expect that, as an intern, when you come to Singapore, enjoying the life, enjoying socializing in Singapore is a key thing you want to take away as well. And as you do that, you have your localized English, which I assume must be pretty much publicized in any part of the world outside Singapore. So we have this localized English called Singlish.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most efficient language in the world. We are so efficient that when it comes to speaking, especially on a socializing level, we just use intonation, use the same word, but with different intonation to share different meanings. And if you are outsider, if you just arrive in Singapore for the very first time, you will get quite a shock trying to speak to somebody. And actually, I have a video here that I'd like to share. I'll share the link in the group chat, and anybody who has time later can actually check out this video. It's a very short YouTube video. It's about 6 minutes. Watch it at their own time. It's almost like a comedy teaching you about how Singlish is about. And it's done by one of the local digital content producer in Singapore. So I hope you guys enjoy this show.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would definitely be watching that later. I was actually reading about Singlish and something about you add la at the end of like every word or something.
Yeah.
It sounds like a crazy thing, and it would be quite a shock. You'd be like, what language are they speaking?
Totally.
So yeah, really interesting. And Cole, obviously you've done an internship in Singapore. What would you say are some maybe like best practices that anyone who's thinking about doing an internship in Singapore, what is a way they can succeed as an intern in Singapore?
Yeah, sure. So I think going into it, wherever you go, I feel like you'd be very welcomed, right? But you have to come ready to work, come ready to be able to be very interpersonal, right? I think that in my experience, at least, the team was all about really getting to know you and looking to build you up to bring the best out in you. So look to come on your A game for sure. And you'll definitely get most out of the experience. From that, I think, get an MRC card. I'll mention that again. You want to be able to travel everywhere and be able to get to work. So the best way to commute that I saw was to go by the train, and it was amazing. So great to have, and even past like Larson talking about outside of work, enjoying and being social. The MRT will get you to where you need to go. So keep that in mind. I would say with that, be ready to learn about people with different backgrounds. Like I said, in my team, there were like 6 or 7 different nationalities, and you'll get so much more out of the experience if you just have those one-on-one conversations with them to understand their background, understand their culture, because Singapore is all about bringing people from all walks of life together. I think whenever I was first coming in, someone described it as the melting pot of the world, right? And it's beautiful. I loved it. And so being able to tap into that is something that I would really encourage. Trying to think, there's one other point I wanted to bring up. Anywho, you're going to love it. It is an experience unlike any other. I talk about it all the time, and people probably get bothered about it. But it is something that you will be successful if you make the most out of it, like I mentioned. And it's exciting that some of you are considering it. Yeah, I wish I could be in your shoes again. Yeah.
Amazing. So kind of in a way, Singapore's culture is a combination of cultures from all over the world, and their culture is being diverse, and that's really interesting. Right. And Larson, obviously you've hosted a lot of our interns in Singapore. You've seen them succeed and maybe also fail in some aspects. And what advice would you give to any students joining us today who are considering an internship in Singapore?
No, I just want to say they succeed. All of them succeeded. I mean, if you come to Singapore and you leave with a big smile and a LinkedIn full of friends, you've succeeded regardless. Yeah. So if I were to give advice, I would say here are 3 tips. Okay. if you're intending to come to Singapore, number one, get vaccinated, because otherwise you won't be able to enter shopping malls. You won't be able to sit and dine in any restaurants at the moment. So you've got to get vaccinated. The second advice is come with an open mind. I run a business here. I've hosted as an employer, but I say come with an open mind, enjoy the social life as much as enjoy the work life. Outside the office is just as important. Enjoy the city, enjoy the food, enjoy the experience outside the office. So come with an open mind. The third advice I would say, enjoy the multicultural, enjoy the multiracial culture that you're going to get here in Singapore. From food to souvenirs, from enjoying the attractions to shopping, enjoy all of them while you can. By the way, most of the interns who we've hosted, right, use Singapore as a hopping ground. They come to Singapore, they fly over to Bangkok for the weekend. Hopefully you can still do that when you come by, but that'll be fun.
Wow, I love that.
I definitely did that when I was there. I made the most of my time it's so easy to hop. It's so much different than the United States. Like I took a trip to Bali when I was there for the weekend, took a trip to Bangkok, went through Malaysia. It was amazing that you have that opportunity right there.
Amazing. And going back to Cole, like, could you just give us a bit of an insight into what your interview process was like with your host company? I know obviously when you go through Absolute Internship, we do a sort of first interview, but I mean the one with the Singapore company, and like, how was that? And was there any differences between that and other interviews you've done?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, at first we had the Absolute interview, really just to get to know me, understand who I am, and what my motivations were, right? I think then I went on to my round with Takeda. And with that, it was with one of the managers there that I'd be working with. And so with that, it was really similar to a lot of the other interview processes I've gone through, some understanding, some behavioral questions, what I wanted to get out of it, why Singapore, and what would I want to get out of my time there past just working. And I think one of the bigger differences was that all of my interviews were at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, just to accommodate them. I think that was one of the other points I wanted to mention about the internship is there's going to be times where you might have to work, till 7 or 8. And that's just because of the how multinational the Takeda and Singapore is. But overall, the interview process, very similar to what you'd see elsewhere. I think that they just wanted to evaluate who I am and if I'd be fully prepared to, one, take on the time to be in an international experience for a summer, and then to see, what I could bring to the table coming into Takeda and what my motivations were there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, nice. And last thing, going back to you again, I know you're a massive LinkedIn guy, you're a super networker. So I wanted to ask about any tips you had for networking in Singapore, or networking in general, to be honest, and what's been successful for you?
Actually, I'm not a super LinkedIn guy, but
really?
I've shared this experience with quite a few students recently. In the last 3 months, I think I did a few 4 or 5 sessions on this. If I were to summarize all this, I would say the imposter syndrome is a huge thing. Just because you are a student, you have not yet stepped into you have not yet started your career, doesn't mean you have nothing interesting to share on LinkedIn. If you're talking about particularly on LinkedIn, and if you talk about mentorship, it is not always the older guys always having something to bring to the table. It works both ways. So if you intend to network on LinkedIn or in person whenever you can, get rid of the imposter syndrome, because every one of us have an interesting story to share, no matter how junior or no matter whether you're a student or young executive. So go out and tell your story.
Yeah, I agree. That's really nice to hear. And when I was doing my little bit of research before this webinar, because obviously, as I said, I've never been to Singapore, I've never worked with anyone from Singapore, so I was really interested to hear from you guys. And I actually found a lot of times I was looking at things, the same thing kept popping up about the concept of face. So like keeping your face, and they want to really sensitive to retaining your face, and they don't want to drop the face and feel embarrassed or feel shame. And Larson, if that's something you could tell me a bit more about, because I'm really interested about this concept, and if any experience you've had with it and what it means.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a big thing in Asian heritage, especially when it's talking about Southeast Asia. In Chinese, there is a term. Literally, it means throw away face.
Mm.
In Chinese, it's pronounced as 丢脸. So it's all about pride. And when it comes to a working environment, the last thing you want to do is to embarrass anybody. So I think it's pretty much the same anywhere, except in Southeast Asia, maybe when you're dealing with um, a senior who is way older than you, the last thing you want to do is to embarrass this person in front of the entire cohort. Okay. So that's what you want to do. So yeah, just watch out for that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I also read that there's a lot of non-verbal communication, like body language and expressions are really important. And maybe Cole, I don't know if you've had any experience with that, anything where you felt a bit like, you had to read body language a lot, or did you not really experience that a lot? What did you think, Cole?
Yeah, I think that I experienced it a little bit outside of work. I think that there, people who maybe like a public official or anything like that, people that were just out and about, you could definitely tell that they were very expressive in that way. Not necessarily something I dug into much, but there were times where I felt a little confused where everyone else was just continuing on with their day going on. But yeah.
Okay. And we're actually, I don't know how that's happened, but we're reaching the half an hour mark. So I just wanted to give you both a chance to maybe share with us your one top tip to succeed in Singapore. Each of you, just share one thing that you really want to share with the people in the call today.
I can start. I would say coming into Singapore, just embrace it. You're gonna have a lot of times where you may feel way out of place. It's an unreal city, right? It's one of the biggest economies in the world, and there's so much to do. Past work, you're going to have time that you can experience Singapore, and I say do it. There is so much out there in this small city state to experience, and you're going to get everything out of your time there by really blending your time with working and with going and enjoying the rest that Singapore has to offer. I'd say I was busy 100% of the time. I worked until 4 or 5, and then after that I was out doing things, exploring the city and like going out and seeing the more northern parts, like where there's jungles and like parks and whatnot. And I don't regret it for a second. I may have lost a couple hours of sleep, but in the end, it was worth every minute of it. And so definitely embrace what Singapore has to offer, because it is one of the most unique experiences you could have in the world.
Amazing. And Lawson, what about you?
I still go back to the same line: be yourself. Believe in yourself. Believe that you will always have something to bring to the table. The last count I did, I think we hosted 13 students from Absolute from day one. Wow. So single one of them, whether it's Toronto, the UK, we love what they bring. Everyone brings a different story, and just believe in your own capabilities. You're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel a little bit nervous. It's natural. Every one of us have that. But when you get into the work, like what Cole says, you get busy and you no longer think about your hair, your clothes. You're just busy. So enjoy the experience.
I agree with you 100%. And that goes for anyone doing an internship, whether that's in Singapore or not. Really being yourself and embracing who you are and making the most out of it is one of the best advice that you can give. So thank you so much for sharing that, guys. You were mentioning about, especially if someone's older than you, you don't want to, embarrass them or like, disrespect them in any way. And obviously that's the same everywhere. But I was reading that this might not be true in every part of Singapore, but I saw something that said that elders are often introduced first, even if, like, no matter what their rank is. So, they're given preferential seating at the table. They are like generally given the best of everything, seeing as they're older, they're more senior. Even if, the CEO could be like 20 years younger than them, they would still respect the more senior people a lot more than maybe in other cultures. So yeah, if you have any notes about that or any experience with that, I'd love to hear.
I think in Singapore, it's not as rigid as it is in the Japan culture, the Japanese culture. But you're right in the sense that I think 10 years ago, I used to have a carpenter who is in his 60s. Is really a very hands-on person. Is absolutely wonderful with his handicraft. And well, even though he works for us, everywhere we go, we address him by Uncle something. His name is Po, P-O-H. So everywhere we go, even when we are talking to him in front of the client, outside the office, we always address him as Uncle Po. And I think generally just want to be respectful.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, of course, being respectful is always important. I was just curious to know if it was like extra important to older people. And I also wanted to ask Cole, obviously, you did your internship, but I actually don't know much about this internship. So maybe like for an insight into what an intern abroad could look like, maybe you could share a bit more about, what kind of tasks you were doing and anything that you want to share about your general experience.
Yeah, sure. So within Takeda, it's a pharmaceutical company and it's global, right? And what I did, I was a pricing and market access intern. And so essentially to keep it, across all levels here, what I did was I looked at pricing of drugs in the 35 countries of focus for us, which were the emerging markets. There are a lot of different pricing sources, a lot coming from the pricing affiliates in those countries, from online databases that they had. And so my job was to pretty much streamline these prices down, understand what was the correct price. And then over the next 10 years, there are, so many different modalities that can affect the price of a pharmaceutical product. And so my job was to look to see how those prices can change. And so I made like a pricing erosion spreadsheet for these 35 countries. Got to be able to communicate that to the team and keep everyone informed in our 10-year forecast. From there, I then went to, I took on another project where I helped one of my colleagues make a playbook that essentially would line out how we would address different national payers on what was, the value we could bring with our drug products. And so the payers are the ones, within these countries that pay for the products, say like your national insurance. And so basically understanding how do we communicate with healthcare providers and with the payers to be able to bring value out of our drugs and be able to get us into a place where we could feel comfortable with making more patient access programs, where we can help patients be able to get drugs for a very reduced price or free. So something that was really neat. I felt really close to the patient, even though I was doing a lot more business analytical work. Something I love to be able to do because I didn't know about it before. And one thing I liked is that my team recognized this. They recognize I'm a student, really in this space for the first time. So they helped me out with it and helped me, guide through, I even did a market access little learning session that they had, like an internal learning session, which was really neat, helped me, set a great foundation for me. And it also set up a place to where I felt really comfortable asking questions to some of the people on my team. Like my boss was one of their senior directors. But I felt very comfortable with communicating with him, asking questions, getting to know it, and even providing my own ideas. While they may have not been spot on or guiding the business decision, right? It brought up other ideas for the team to be able to pivot off of that, which is something I really love because in the end of it, they recognized that and thanked me for doing that because it brought another level of diversity, right? My viewpoint was, so new and something that the team really respected because, I'm just coming into this new space. There's different things. I'm not stuck in the routine that they were, working in there for years. And so I know Larson mentioned that a lot, be yourself, really own your experience because you have something to bring to the table, even if it's not, I didn't have 10 years of market access experience, but I still came in being able to contribute in a way to spur conversation and spur thought, which is really, in the end, really valuable to the team and valuable to me because it gave me a little bit of confidence to keep pursuing this industry.
Amazing. And it sounds like you had a massive level of responsibility as well, which is always a great experience.
I did. And something that was very unique, I felt like, because, in some internships, you go in, you might fill coffee for the senior director, right? But with me, I felt respected in the team, and I'm really, really happy that I was able to be provided that.
That's amazing. And we actually do have a question. First question. What's something you didn't enjoy as much in the work culture or that you maybe struggle with in Singapore? Maybe you could both share, or maybe Larson, something that you maybe struggle with or you don't enjoy as much.
Yeah, I think that I really enjoyed the work culture. It was something that it was right up my alley. I think being hardworking and being respected, no matter your background, was something that my team brought, and I loved that. I think that there were times, probably only like 3 or 4 times, where I had to stay late. It was just till like 8 o'clock or so. But honestly, it was a part of the experience. What else am I going to do? It is a part of the experience, and I can, that's what people in Singapore do sometimes. And with that, I mean, I even got to ride the MRT late at night, so I got to see Singapore in a different light, literally. So that was really fun. One thing I did struggle with, I guess, that like I mentioned, it's pretty warm there, and it also rains pretty often. It's right on the equator, right? So you're kind of expecting rain every day at some point. But overall, it's something you adjust to within the first 2 weeks or so. You always pack an umbrella, but I would say maybe that's one of the hurdles, but I loved it.
Amazing. And Larson, I mean, you've obviously lived there for so long. I'm sure if there was something you really didn't like, you probably would still live there. But maybe if there's a little something that you struggle with or don't enjoy as much.
Well, I think the work pace can be quite fast. The pace at work in the office, especially when chasing deadlines and everything. We tend to be a bit direct when it comes with instructions, or we come with certain feedback. And we just go straight to the point and say, hey, look, this is not working. I need to rework this or something like that. And so that can be a little bit too direct for some people, but it's all just about the work. So that's one thing that I think maybe you may need some time to get used to.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I love that. And yeah, it's been amazing having you all. Thank you so much to Cole and Larson, especially for joining us. I hope you've all learned something new about Singapore, and maybe some of you are considering traveling there, working there, interning there. So really excited about that. Okay. Thank you all so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your International Education Week. And we'll be seeing some of you tomorrow for our Sweden Culture Talk. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yep, have a good night.